International relations do not simply encompass a theory of politics in one country or continent, but a theory of global relations. And our role of PR practitioners in a global market is that of being able to work with a multitude of cultures and publics with the aim of providing a range of services that are not ethnocentric. We have the ability of keeping in play a number of competing concepts of how things are and ensure that we either make the best choice on behalf of our clients or that we advise them what that best choice is. We do that using a variety of means and methods of communication because, after all, to have any relation with any public starts with properly and meaningfully communicating with that public. When it comes to defining what PR actually is, we can never come to an agreement. I have selected here the most relevant definition of PR as it applied and it continues to apply to my own professional experience of 22 years. International public relations must be inclusive to accurately reflect the diversity of a global communication process. In this light, a single definition of public relations may be less important than having an informed worldview that embraces diverse meanings. Public relations does have an international outreach, have absolutely no doubt about that. Managers are global, the issues management component is global, the risk faced by organizations operating internationally differs, the decisions taken by any board impact that business global operations. To survive in a highly competitive environment, businesses need to expand. Stakeholders have become more important than ever in an immediate social media age. The change management process shares the final outcome but not the journey to reach it. And being knowledgeable of the unwritten rules of anything international has become a prerequisite for success. For international businesses, the PR role as a management function is that of recognizing the external and internal threats and opportunities, the weaknesses of the organization with respect to the expectations of its stakeholders, the strengths of the organization and its potential positioning on foreign markets. With regard to our involvement in the management of issues in an international setting, our role is that of preventing such issues from becoming full-blown crises. It's about making smarter decisions, mitigating risk, and exploiting opportunities. As such, the input an international public relations expert can bring is invaluable to every and to any business. There is not one single business today who wishes to expand internationally, who, shall we say, doesn't require the identification of potential untapped markets or regions. There is no business that is an international business that doesn't require input into its own risk and benefit analysis. These businesses need international public relations experts, not necessarily to guide them, but to show them the swim lanes, to show them the ropes, to help them understand what it is allowed to do and what it is frowned upon. Because what works in one culture or in one geographic region does not necessarily work in the other. The communication process needs to be very different, not just in terms of its delivery, i.e., the channels that we may be using, but also in terms of its content and context. Yes, the core message needs to be the same, but how we deliver it and how we articulate it in such a way that it resonates exactly with the target audience or public is a different thing altogether. Hence, our further input into any sort of business development, let alone marketing strategies going forward. Language, slang, and all sorts of other particularities of any language play an important role in the communication process, and the sound familiarity with the culture our clients operate in, as I was mentioning earlier, is paramount. We need to understand that the strategies and tactics we may deploy are seldom replicable, and they cannot be off-the-shelf products. Politics, irrespective of it being local or not, if improperly understood, can severely undermine any business initiative and, if not addressed in time, it can have unwanted ripple effects throughout the business. As such, while we do need and must have a basic structure of how, when, and what as a starting point, our approach needs to be completely tailored. We also need to pay particular importance to the stakeholders we are dealing with. Sometimes the internal ones are more important than the external ones simply because they are the ambassadors of that business. Trust, real engagement, a two-way and proactive dialogue can only help the communication process. The manager's key role is that of achieving certain outcomes or at least gaining tangible results. For this to happen, there needs to be clarity about what it is desired to be achieved, and all the relevant business structures, systems, and strategies must be in place to attain these. A PR expert should be able to narrow down and assist with all these parameters. It is about steering the course, keeping it simple, and communicating the vision in a very straightforward, as the case may be, fashion. However, irrespective of how well planned, structured, or organized such intervention may be, this is unlikely to work unless particular attention is paid to another aspect of the change process, the emotional component. This cannot be separated from the change itself because the simple notion of change reflects a disturbance in the equilibrium between individuals, teams, and organizations. So, an international PR expert, irrespective of the organization or the region in the world we may work in, should be able to use all the tools and techniques available to us to assist in the change process. We can analyze, assess, report, and advise. It is, if you wish, a different take on the market research for a product launch, only that this time our product is an initiative and we don't fight for earned coverage in the media. This time, our strategy is that of ensuring that the consumers appreciate the product and that our teasers and PR efforts have proved successful. We do have an international operational flow and a structured method of approach. We start with the business intelligence aspects, and then we need to enact a proactive approach followed by the deployment of bespoke solutions or, as the case may be, specific options. Nothing should be off the shelf. Sadly, many times in the past when I mentioned these particular concepts, primarily the business intelligence part of our line of work, I've been getting strange looks from our peers. We have to understand that psychology, intelligence, analysis, a critical approach, critical analysis are key to our success. We have to know how to use these successfully for our clients and for our employers. And we need to provide them not with opinions or with hearsay, or as I often heard, or because I think so, or because it's my gut instinct. Businesses can be lost based on someone's gut instinct. We also often speak about credibility and gaining a seat at the table. If we deal in gut instinct, and it is my belief, or I think, or in my experience, how are those going to get us a seat at the table when often, more often than not, at least in my case, what I advise on and what I talk about are significant job losses, or significant business gains, or significant business losses. And I'm not talking in the region of one or two jobs, I'm talking about hundreds or even thousands of jobs, and quite a significant amount of money in the regions of tens of millions of dollars or pounds, depending who I'm working with and for. So therefore, we have to understand that every information that comes before our eyes needs to be filtered through several lenses, that of properly backed up and verified data and facts, and then interpreted through the lens of those who we wish to communicate with, i.e. to put forward a proposal, and those we communicate to, i.e. the publics we are speaking about. Therefore, everything, absolutely everything, needs to be bespoke. If we only take a look at this infographic or chart that has been issued by the International Monetary Fund in its World Economic Outlook update in January this year, we can immediately see where the growth is coming from. And if I draw your attention to the right side of the screen as you're looking at it, to Middle East and Central Asia, emerging and developing Asia, let alone the sub-Saharan Africa, that's where the growth projections, that's where the money, in other words, is going to be coming from, or the money is going to be made. So unless we can speak, and by speak I do not necessarily mean speaking the language of that country, unless we speak the culture of the Middle East and Central Asia. Central Asia, for your information, primarily refers to the former Soviet Union states. Some of us know them as the Stan countries. Unless we understand the Asian, as in proper Asia, if I may call it so, the Asian culture, customs, way of doing business, politeness sometimes taken to the extreme, saying things but actually not saying anything, and providing messages in a one-to-one shape that are more often than not nothing more than handshakes or gestures or looks or interpretations of one's physical behavior. If we do not understand that for the sub-Saharan Africa, interpersonal relations and the way you understand their jokes, their cultures, their customs matter enormously, even if you just know two words and you apply them in the right context, that may open up some doors for you that no matter how much you try, you wouldn't get them opened otherwise. Then let's have a look at the Latin America and the Caribbean region. Completely different culture, completely different approach, a different way of doing business. If we are not the ones to advise these businesses who wish to expand in these regions, how to communicate, what to communicate, and when to communicate, who can do that, I wonder? As I mentioned in the previous slide, your success factors for emerging markets are, in my view at least, pretty basic and pretty common sense. You have to do your market research. You have to understand who you're talking to, who your publics are, how do they communicate, how do they like to be communicated with, what sort of channels, with what means, visual, words, influencers, politicians, etc. Basic common sense. Without doing the market research, how? Tell me, how is it possible for any of us to ever stand up in any boardroom and say, I know this because I have a gut instinct? No, you have to do your homework, you have to do your research. You also have to look sometimes, as it's very customary to do a lot of merger and acquisitions in the global expansion arena, you have to be able to analyze and assess the reputational risk of your employer or your client potentially partnering with an organization in that country or in the other country. What is it being said about that business across all the channels? Is it right? Is it wrong? Is it defamatory? Is it libel? Is it paid for? Is it politically connected? How will associating your client or your employer in name and legally with that business is going to affect their own expansion in that particular area? You have to understand the risks that are involved with everything, not just the risks from a simple PR fluffy perspective. Those, in my view, are not necessarily relevant, although they are very low on the scale. You have to actually know the business you are working for or consulting for, look at its own risks and how those risks are going to be either mitigated by expanding in that area or partnering with that foreign business, or how they are going to be heightened if they were to do that. Once you understand that, what is your position, what is your advice, how is your contribution going to make a difference and provide your client or your employer with the proper advice? You have to localize your products and services. What does this mean? As I was mentioning earlier, what works here may not work there. So what is the best way to convey that message, to articulate that proposition, to launch that product, or to launch that service on that market? That's up to you and down to you to get it right. It's not down to anyone else. Leverage everything that the digital world can offer you, because it saves you a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of resource, which you can use to think and strategize as opposed to just simply execute. Artificial intelligence is here to stay and develop much faster then you and I will probably grow old. So use what it is available to you and keep your brain and your mind very sharp and ready to act and advise on the moment, providing you are in possession of the accurate, right, and factual information. I know that this slide may be a bit complex in terms of its representation of financial terms, but I think it's pretty simple. So these are the emerging markets projection for Coca-Cola HBC's operating profit. Just look how much profit they are expecting from the emerging markets, let alone the established markets or developing markets. Imagine if they are to get anything wrong and to lose the potential of an emerging market. Where are they going to get the same operating profit from? The millions and millions of pounds they would be expecting to come from that market, because when you offend your host, let's be very clear here, every foreigner in every country, be that a person or a business, is a guest in someone else's country. So if you offend your host and your apology, providing it is accepted, in many cases it is not, pardon me, truly heartfelt, it's not backed up by proper evidence, it's not really meant, it's going to lose you a lot of money, credibility, and reputation. It is crucial for today's business personnel to understand the impact of cross-cultural differences upon international businesses. Essentially, the plans put in place by any organization's strategic staff or consultants will influence the outcome of any potential merger, venture, or acquisition. Consequently, the need for greater cross-cultural awareness is heightened in our global economies, and cross-cultural differences in matters such as language, etiquette, non-verbal communication, norms, and values can, do, and will lead to cross-cultural blunders. Such blunders, more often than not, lead to crises. Faced with a crisis of any kind, organizations will have to communicate. The outcome of the communication process will be mostly entirely dependent on the how of the communication, not on the what is being said. The map on your screen right now offers an overview of the world as perhaps we don't often think about. This is a map of religions, societies, and cultures of the world, and allow me to draw your attention to the last three items of the legend and on the following words: traditional and tribal. While a traditional society may be viewed as a society characterized by an orientation to the past, not the future, with a predominant role for custom and habit, the tribal society represents a stable social system with a division of labor organized around extended family relations. With these in mind, perhaps now we can see why the remit of an international PR practitioner becomes sensitive, sometimes extremely difficult. And if you pay further attention to the last three items of the legend, you will see that while we are talking about regions, Central Asia, Western and Central Africa, Greenland, and north of Canada, we are actually talking about a combination of different values, expectations, and publics: traditional, tribal, Christian, Muslim. We may be having one client or one project to deliver in one country pertaining to one of these regions, but the how of the message needs to be deployed in such a way that all major cultural and value-based concepts encountered in this country are simultaneously addressed. At first sight, leadership, international negotiations, and diplomacy may appear to be strange mentions in our practice. Actually, they are not. They all require the same set of skills that is often encountered in international public relations: the ability to understand the ripple effects caused by actions undertaken by organizations and their executives, the importance of observing the local specifics, and an acute awareness of the other's sensitivities. The difference between local and international public relations is dramatic. Not dramatically different in terms of core competencies, but dramatically different in terms of international outreach. Hence, the higher the international component, the greater the risk and/or the reward. Generally, a local PR activity focuses on the now: what activities the organization should sponsor, the location, as in media outlet, we place an ad in, the earned media, which is generally local, the media representatives we have formed a relationship with, and the local events we organize. But when it comes to the international aspect of public relations, we need to account for a multinational organization facing cultural challenges or cultural differences other than its own organizational concepts, working in a potentially unknown and risky foreign environment, and which needs to effectively communicate to its local publics and stakeholders its action or its growth or its change plans. The communication of the latter, particularly envisaging the leadership and negotiations component, in either a positive or negative scenario, may lead to a significantly strong reaction from the local society. To make sure that the outcome of such an activity is a positive one, a sound cultural understanding is necessary to effectively achieve the objectives of the brief or of the initiative and the organization's communications strategies. In this slide, I have laid out 14 skills, abilities, capabilities, competencies, you name them how you wish to name them, that I believe an international public relations practitioner should be at least familiar with, if not an expert in. Without these, all of these that you see here on your screen, no one can be an effective international public relations expert or an international communicator or an international public affairs specialist, however you wish to name it. Why? Because in an international setting, all these, I would like to call them competencies, provide you with a comprehensive picture of what it is you have to do, who you have to do it with, how you have to do it, why you have to do it, and what it takes for you to do it. If there is one single line item in here that you are not familiar with, or your colleagues or your staff, depending who you are watching this masterclass, I would strongly suggest that you either go and sharpen up your skills put yourself through a training course. There are numerous courses out there, or you send your staff to do a training course or read about it or find a way to become familiar, at least familiar, with what this means. The more you know, the more you will understand, the more you will be able to see the end of the chess game you need to play every single time. I wanted to end this masterclass on a lighter note. For those of you who know me, you know that I don't joke very often, or I do not joke a lot, but I just thought the best way to frame this masterclass would be to actually end it with a joke. This also helps me to re-emphasize how important proper global marketing and communication are, and how vital our contribution is. And I have chosen this fantastic image set, which I believe it to be highly relevant for the cross-cultural engagement and communication aspect of our work. So let's go for it. It goes like this. A disappointed salesman of Coca-Cola, because we spoke of Coca-Cola earlier, returned from his assignment to Saudi Arabia. A friend asked, "Why weren't you successful with the Saudis?" The salesman explained, When I got posted, I was very confident that I would make a good sales pitch. But I had a problem. I didn't know how to speak Arabic. So I planned to convey the message through 3 posters. First poster, a man lying in the hot desert sand, totally exhausted and fainting. Second poster, the man is drinking Coca-Cola. Clear. Third poster, our man is now totally refreshed. And then these posters were distributed all over the place. "Oh, terrific! That should have worked," said his friend. "Unfortunately not," said the salesman. "No one told me that they read from right to left." In other words, my dear friends and colleagues, you're very happy, healthy, able to run in the desert, you drink a Coca-Cola, you drop down and you die. I hope this masterclass is going to help you in the years to come, and it will be useful for you, your team, and your colleagues. Thank you.